With us today, we have Mr. Matt Slazak, who's very, very passionate about talent acquisition in general, especially Infor, and our HCM Practice Manager, Melissa Olson. And with that, I give you Matt and Melissa.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, do you have the...
I do, yep.
Let's go ahead and hit the About Us. If all of you have come to our presentations before, you should know who RPI is. But in case you don't, we are an Infor partner, full partner, doing technical, functional, and any kind of Infor Lawson software implementations, upgrades, assessments, any kind of help you can need with your Infor system, we take care of it. We've got here, people are different. We're a little different because we do have a team-based approach. Matt and I have worked together on a lot of projects, and I know Matt's one of the best on my team in talent acquisition, so I like to pull him for any project that has talent acquisition needs. So that's kind of how we work. We pull, our experts, the people with the most knowledge, into different projects, so you get the best service and knowledge. Okay, so here's an agenda of what we're going to hit today. We're just going to lightly go over what the talent acquisition module is. You probably should already know, maybe have ever heard about it, maybe seen some demos or seen some other presentations about it. We're going to differentiate it by talking a little bit about more of the details that you've seen in implementations, that you've done in implementations.
Right. And it's definitely a lot different than what you might be used to on the S3 side with old
PA 30 applicant tracker.
All the bad old days, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about how it really integrates with the entire GHR and talent management modules, because this is really the front door for things, and it really is one of the key components that will really help build out that whole GHR system as we go on. We'll talk about some of the key components of it as well when we start to talk about the spaces, the candidate space, the employee space, the manager space. We'll talk about some of those.
Okay, yeah, we'll tell you about some of the new and upcoming features that that's been passed down to us from Infor, the product development team, and we'll let you know why you should use this over potentially what you might be using today. It's changed a lot in the last year. If you've seen it a year or two ago and it wasn't the right product for you, maybe give it another look, because it really has been, there's been so much more development, and Infor has been listening to what clients have been saying is the reasons for why they couldn't use it, and they've been doing development to meet the needs that people need, or organizations will really need.
Right, and we'll also talk about some of the things that we've seen in a lot of clients, things that they change, some configurations they make, things to tweak the product a little bit to really make it work for their organization specifically. Okay,
so what is talent acquisition? So I'm sure you guys know what talent acquisition is as the terminology in HR and recruiting, but the module itself is part recruitment and applicant tracking system. There's components for internal applicants to be able to go into their employee space, look at jobs, and be able to apply from employee space, as well as an external web-facing web page that external applicants can access as well. It also comes loaded with a bunch of requests and approvals. So bad old days, anything that you rolled out in S3, you had to determine what was your process, what kind of approval flows did you need. You couldn't just push something out to a manager and let them open a rack and hire somebody without having IPA involved, and you had to build those. Now all of those things are out of the box. So we'll go into what some of that looks like. It is a role-based system, so the security that you don't need to build new security classes and security roles. All of this is delivered out of the box as part of the GHR Foundation. So when you turn on talent acquisition, you've got talent acquisition-based roles for your recruiters, your recruiting manager, for your managers, and anybody else in the HR realm, like a generalist, that may have something to do with creating new jobs to add into your requisitions. So all of those roles are already created. They're already identified. They understand what generalists, recruiters, managers generally need to do for hiring, and they've built that security for you. And of course, you can use Configuration Console to tweak those to fit your organization.
Right.
And then the last thing there is the process automation. I talked a little bit about that request and approval tracking. You're able to view where everything is at any time, but that is driven by all of the automation behind all of those out-of-the-box process flows that understand what a recruiting life cycle looks like, from candidate application, or from requisition open all the way through hiring your candidate as an employee. All of that automation is already built.
Right. It's a very big module. There's a lot of pieces to it, but it's really, really powerful at the end of the day. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so let's talk about how it fits into your global HR core and the other talent management modules. So it is tightly bound. We used to hear a lot of organizations wanting just talent acquisition, and they wanted to figure out how can we put in talent acquisition without putting GHR in. We don't have the time, the resources, we don't need a new HRIS, but we really need a TA system. That wasn't available in the past. I think they are talking about trying to develop a standalone, but for right now, you do need that global HR foundation, your core, to build out all of your jobs and positions to be able to use for your requisitions. Your supervisor stream, or seeing the structure here, your supervisory structure is going to allow the managers access to the jobs that they're able to requisition. And then you can use the HR org structure to, again, further define the jobs and the jobs that each organization is able to requisition for. So it does tie into your applicant tracker. You are able to start, your manager is able to go in there, open a requisition, view some of their applicants. Applicants are able to go in, view all of the requisitions that they'd like to, apply for jobs for. And then, there's the middle person of the recruiter that's able to see, the dashboard of what applicants are attached to each of the requisitions. They're able to do all their screen outs, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then finally, you've got an external web application that you do not have to worry about opening security or opening a door into your system for external people to be able to have an account to apply for a job. This is all external facing. The accounts and the security work outside of your firewall, and they're able to create their job profiles, which do in turn feed into your recruiting system behind your firewall.
Right. And also another nice tie-in is if you're using Position Budget Manager in GHR, this system will tie directly into that as well. Again, if you've got that all built out and you've got that turned on, the routing will start to go through Budget Manager as well.
Budget Manager, so if you don't have the budget in a certain manager's bucket to open a new rec, it'll stop them before that rec can go through. Okay, and the components we touched a little bit about this. Your recruiter, role-based, has their own space where they have their dashboards and where they'll go in and do all of their work. The tasks that they have available for the day all goes into the recruiter space area. Managers in their manager space, or in your S3 days, that manager self-service area, they're able to go in there and they have a section specifically for talent acquisition where they can open up recs and view applicants and do everything they need to do during the applicant process. The employees are able to see, if you want to turn that on, internal job postings, job boards, job descriptions, and then you have the external candidate space, so everybody outside of your organization is able to view the positions.
All right, so when we're looking at recruiter space, this is just a quick view of the recruiter's dashboard, their springboard, what they're going to launch off of to really get into the components for recruiting, and everything that they would be doing recruiting-wise is actually going to route mostly through this dashboard here. So you've got a Today panel, and I'll just kind of briefly talk about that for a moment. Today is really going to be something that a recruiter can use to prioritize what's actually happening today. Are we bringing people in for an interview today? Is there a new requisition that I have to get approved? Things like that are going to show up on that Today form. You're also going to see people who have just applied. So you can start to see how powerful it is for people to be able to see very quickly and easily what's new? What's happening today with these requisitions? I always say that talent acquisition is probably the most hectic portion of any kind of HR team because it's the front face of the organization. You've got people coming in and out, and you're literally looking at thousands of candidates who are going to come in and look at trying to get a job in your organization. So it's really a vital component, and it gets very, very busy. So this is one of the ways where we can filter it down, kind of take some burden off of the recruiter to do that. You can also go through your candidate pool. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. We can also see our requisitions. Recruiter space out of the box is something where if I'm the recruiter, I'm named as a recruiter on, say, 15 requisitions. I will only see those 15 requisitions out of the box. A lot of people modified that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We also have the ability to look at our internal candidates, so people in the entire organization, the resources that are already in-house. As we know, it's a lot better a lot of times to hire internally than externally. You save a lot in costs, and speed of hire is really great if you can get those internal candidates. We can also add a new candidate. Particularly if you're at a lot of recruiting events, if you've got executives, that never happens.
They always go through a portal.
Happy to go, yeah. But yeah, you can add candidates quickly and easily for a recruiter is able to do that very quickly. We can also tag certain candidates with certain statuses and know that this person, it might not be right for this position, but we want to keep an eye on them for this position we know is going to be coming up soon. And then there's also a reporting module that is built right into Recruiter Space, so they can actually quickly draw some analytical data and see how their requisitions are performing. So going in here and looking at Recruiter Space leverages a lot of the components that you've built throughout your GHR system. We were talking about how it's very tightly integrated. If you've built out your jobs and positions the right way, you're going to be able to default a ton of information from that position onto that requisition, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And when you're talking the right way, it's having a lot of your qualifications built out on those job descriptions and on the position descriptions. So now you're not going to another area in your on your requisition to put what are the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies you expect this position to have. If they're already built out, and by no means do you have to have them done to roll this out, but when you're saying, really being able to utilize defaulting mechanisms that GHR has, those are the types of things you'll want to think about building out.
And the nice thing about it is, because we've got that defaulting, that's wonderful. We can get a lot of that and make things a lot easier. But at the same time, we do have the ability in talent acquisition to override some of that information. So we could default in that we're going to recruit for this new requisition, and it's going to be for a staff nurse. But we don't want to name it a staff nurse position because people might not understand what that is. So we just want to say registered nurse. The recruiter can override that right in Recruiter Space and talent acquisition without going back and changing the position or anything like that. So you've got that flexibility. The requisition itself, though, also has other components, things like the opening information. How many people are we hiring for this position? You've also got the ability to name a different hiring manager, somebody who's not necessarily in the supervisory structure, but we know that, this new position, it actually reports to me, but I really want Melissa. She's going to handle the recruiting for me and makes the decisions about who we're actually going to hire. We name her as the hiring manager, and that's how a lot of things will route through. We're also able to track recruiting costs. I've seen clients where they might have the ability to charge back other departments for recruiting costs. So I placed this ad in this newspaper, and it costs X amount per column inch. I can actually track that cost through, and then I'll do a budget transfer and get that money back from that department. You wanted this ad, you're going to pay for it now. Yeah. So you also have the ability to name an interview team. This is something that's pretty new within the last couple versions. So if I know that I'm going to bring in this person for a group interview, I can name who those people are. They don't have to be supervisors. They don't have to be hiring managers. They are simply going to function as the interview team. They're going to come in and see all these people. We'll give them a limited view of who the candidates for this requisition are, and they can start to be involved in the decision-making process.
And they can take some notes on there, so if the hiring manager wants to get a comprehensive view from the interview team,
Yep.
they can do that.
Yep, there's a lot of ability for them to be able to do that. We're also able to start to build out questions. So a question that you might use, for example, would be the overall, are you qualified for this position? Something like that. You can also put in, questions.
What is the answer of 8 square root of 586? Those are some of our interview questions, analytical and math skills.
Exactly, but it's totally valid, and we can do that. We can add those questions in. Are you eligible to work in the United States? Things like that. We can build those questions in and put them out there for candidates to answer. So we're kind of doing some pre-screening. We don't have to ask when they come in. We can actually have that kind of taken care of beforehand. We also are able to talk about adding postings. So these are the job boards. We'll get into those in just a couple minutes, but we can tell exactly where we're putting it out there for people to apply to them. We're talking about, is it an internal posting or an external? This is what we're talking about with that. We've also got a lot of other information about, responsibilities. What is the position profile look like? We're talking about, do you have the right credentials? Do you have the right license to do this? Again, if we build these out on the jobs and positions, this is going to flow through, and this requisition, just by invoking that position number, is going to pull through a lot of that, the required information, the things that people need to be successful in their job. We've also got the ability to have an overall template of what the job description that we're going to put out there for people to apply to see. We can put it in there and then modify it before we actually let people see it. And we're also able to go in, I talked about the questions already. Perfect. So move on with there. So I mentioned real quick the postings and the job boards. So job boards are exactly what they sound like. We are putting this position out somewhere for somebody to apply to it. So there are 3 main types of job boards. You've got your internal job board, which is just for your internal candidate population, for everybody who's currently working there. We have our external job boards. So this is whether you place it on your internal website, external website for people to apply to, your careers page, which tends to be the most trafficked page in any organization. We can post it directly to there. We also have the ability to have a third-party job board. Okay. Now, the nice thing about that is that would be your Monster.coms, your Yahoo Hot Jobs, Career Builders, LinkedIn's, all that stuff. So we can post this file out there to those third-party job boards and get that information out. The good thing about the job boards themselves is when we're building them out, we have the ability to build out the posting template and define exactly what information is going to be displayed for all of these people. So the internal people, the internal candidates are only going to see certain fields, ones that are really important. But do we necessarily need to have an internal candidate know where the location of the job is? If you're a single facility, it's still the single place you're going to work. So we can suppress that. But an external person might need to see that. We might not want internal people to see the pay range or something like that, or if it's in a different department. We have the ability to put those onto our posting templates and just automatically have it show up when we invoke those job boards. So you can see here, right on the job requisition itself, we're able to exactly which job posting template we have. So if I want to do something with our internal, I'm going to invoke the internal job posting, and whenever I post it out there, or when I create that posting, it will invoke that template and put that information out there. The only problem with this right now is that there's only one job posting template that you're able to pull out. So if I want to do something like an internal job posting and an external job posting simultaneously, you have to come back in here and change which job posting template you want to use. We'll talk about how we kind of get around that in just a little bit.
Okay. Okay, so we'll talk about the requisition dashboard right now. So Matt was talking about what's available today, their springboard that they see. This is the other area they're going to spend a lot of time. Once they have their requisitions, you can see over on the left-hand side, those are all the jobs that have been posted that are under that specific recruiter's realm. And you'll see the tabs across the top that show exactly where your candidates are in any point of that requisition. So we've got a VP of Clinical and Financial Operations right here, and I can see there's 3 candidates. That's on my All tab up there, and I've got 1 new candidate. And as I click on those, I can see the information for the candidates that have applied or that have come through. And as it goes through, I can see who's screened out online. If I did put those screening tests on there, and it might not even necessarily have anything to do with that VP position, but it might just have a screen out for the organization that every position has to go through. I can see, of those 3, maybe 1 has been screened out, and I have 2 valid candidates now. Next is my internal screen. As a recruiter, will go give them a call, and my hiring manager has given me a series of questions that they'd like me to ask this candidate. They've already gone through the screen out. They're in the next section. Now it's my turn to screen them as a recruiter. Once I've done that, then I can send it over to the hiring manager, and I can say, hey, you've got 2 good candidates here. Based on what I know from what you've given me as your requirements, these 2 people match. So would you like to interview either of them? So now the hiring manager can go in, view their resume, view their job profile, view any of their screen out tests and results, and they can determine, hey, you know what, of those 2, one of them, they just don't have enough experience, or the experience just isn't the right experience, even though they have the years that I required. So at that point, I can tell the recruiter, I just would like to schedule an interview with one of them, and this is all kind of happening, when I'm reviewing them. And the next one here, you'll see if there's my quality one will move over. So that other one that didn't work out wasn't a quality candidate. So now I've got 1 over, and I'm ready to make an offer to the person. I'll see how many are in offer, and this might be a position that needs multiple. Maybe I have 3 recs open for cashiers, and I've got 15 people in there, and I've made 2 offers, and everybody still kind of stays in that flow until I get all of my positions for that 1 requisition closed out. And then you'll see the next ones here going through, the onboarding, which we'll touch on in a second, and actually hiring them. And then everybody else will go into a disposition. And there's a template, an email template that's attached to that. So whether the recruiter disposes of them, I like that better.
So.
That's where it comes from. They're all disposable. Whether the recruiter dispositions them or the manager, the hiring manager does, there's an email template that your organization can come up with that will tell them, thank you for applying with us. You didn't quite make the cut, however you want to say it, keep an eye on the board, or whatever you'd like to say. The point of it is your recruiter doesn't have to necessarily go out, email them or call them or follow up with them to tell them that they did not make the cut. Obviously, the VP position, somebody will probably pick up the phone and let them know, but in the cashier situation, you have a way that automatically that those people have been removed from that requisition, and they've been notified that they have not received the job.
Right. Bill, we have a question?
Yes, we have a question. It's said we've just implemented talent acquisition in version 11. Mm-hmm. We don't see an option for a third-party job board. Is there something in prerequisites that we need to activate?
Depending on the version, I believe that they've taken some of that functionality and turned it into an external job board, but I'd have to look at the exact version notes to see where it is.
You can take that person's information and
we
then
absolutely
follow up
can.
with them.
Okay.
And I just mentioned, I had a question about the screen. You should have split screen on your GoToWebinar, and you can resize, and if you want to look at the details behind the screen. So look up at the top of the screen and you'll see your options up there.
You can stretch this a little bigger so you can see this, and because I know it's very hard, it's very washed out behind us. So, and this will go out to YouTube. You can see it later, and if you would like a copy of the deck, we can also send that out. You can request that and send that out to you guys.
Right.
And we didn't kind of preface it earlier, you're going to see a bunch of versions of screens here.
Yeah.
Some of them were using the rich client, like the springboard that you saw earlier. This is also part of the rich client. And some of our later ones were using the cloud HCM multi-tenant. And then there's, I don't know if we have any of the web
We do,
URL
yes.
mingle
Yeah.
page, not a mingle page, landing page, do we?
Yeah, some of the landing
We
pages.
do.
Yeah.
So you'll see a little bit of everything.
Right.
So whatever you see here, if this doesn't look familiar to you, it's just one of the multiple versions of the product that you can utilize.
Right, and especially when we touch on some of the newer functionality, it's only in version 11.01. And some of these screenshots are from 10.2 and some are from 10.01. So
Yeah, Matt's done a
it's-
lot of work in configurations with clients, so you know
Right.
he's taken some of the screenshots of the work that he's done, so you can see here. And then where we want to show some new functionality, we'll get into that Cloud Suite latest version, so
Right.
because that won't be in some of these versions.
Right, and that's definitely a testament to how Infor has been growing with this product. I talked about, the 3-4-2 days is the bad old days and
Yeah.
things like that. Talent acquisition over the past couple years, like Melissa said, has undergone such a transformation. There's a lot of new functionality that they're building in. Every single CU seems to have a little extra piece that they're building out, and it's really becoming much more of a functional product. A few years ago, if somebody asked me point blank, would you recommend going to TA? I would have been like, maybe.
If you have a paper process,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But if
yeah.
you're coming from, some other best of breed, then, at that point, no. But
Right.
I think, Infor has been looking at the Teleos and the position managers, health source, to really see what do those best of breeds hold that they can bring in, and
Right.
what the functionality that those recruiters need
Right.
to develop. And Matt was mentioning the CUs. If you are on multi-tenant, you're getting those CUs every 3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's new functionality, whether it's in GHR or it's in TA, there's new functionality coming out monthly. It's not like the S3 days where you had to wait for a year and a half for an enhancement, or a critical transfer patch would come out, once or twice a year. Everything is, fast and furiously being developed and being pushed out.
Right, right. And one other thing to note real quick about these selection processes that people go through, this is usually the biggest learning curve when somebody is implementing talent acquisition. When we're talking about the new and the screened out online and hiring manager review and qualify and all of that, it's really just mirroring how we would move somebody through the progressions. We might just be calling it something different, but these are the out-of-the-box delivered selection processes. So we might move somebody over to that manager to check them out and see how they like them. That would be at the move to hiring manager review. Every single one of these processes are going to have different actions. So I can't move somebody directly from new
screen
to
to
hire.
hire.
Yeah, so you just step people through the process, and the actions are all dynamic.
Yeah, and the recruiter can do that. I mean, you don't necessarily have to bog down your hiring manager to push them through. If they say, this is the person, I already know this person from the industry, they've applied, I've asked them to apply, I want to make an offer to this person, the recruiter is able to just quickly move them through all the processes, so hiring manager doesn't have to go back and forth with them if need be.
Right. So bouncing over to our candidates themselves. So if I'm looking at our candidate pool, I can look very quickly and easily and see exactly what this person has built out on their profile. So if they've gone through and put in all of their education and all of their credentials, I can open up that candidate and proactively look at them and say, you know what, this is great. I think this person would be a perfect fit for this position over here. A recruiter is actually able to parse through everybody in the candidate pool and attach them to requisitions that they think that would be an ideal fit for. You can do it in a couple different ways. The recruiter can do that themselves, or we can burst an email out to that candidate and say, hey, you should check this one out. Check out this position. I think you might fit for it. They're also able to go in and dig a little bit deeper, look at that talent profile and say, all right, I can see that they've got these qualifications. That's great. What else do they have? there's a panel down here at the bottom, which is probably very hard to see, which is personal information. And everybody always gets panicked about that. We do not actually allow recruiters to see personal information. They're not allowed to see gender or ethnicity or number or things like that.
Birth number, birth date, or
Right.
sex number at that point anyway. So.
Right. We're not going to let you get into, problems with AAP or anything like that. That tab is there, but actually it suppresses the data until later on in the process when we move them to hire and actually start to process that hire. Then they'll be able to see the data in there, just to make sure that everything's ready for that person to be hired. But they can actually see, the profile questions. What did they answer? How did they do, and do they actually fit for this position? They can run a proactive analysis and see whether or not this person is actually a fit for the person or for the requisition that's open. So I know we're starting to rush here now. So.
Okay, so we were talking about the hiring manager having a view in their manager space. So you see here, this is again rich client version. Manager has an acquire talent icon there that they're able to, this is the view that's out of the box. Again, Matt's going to talk about some common configurations. You don't have to give your hiring manager access to do all of these things, but out of the box, they're able to create a new requisition. They're able to request a new job. So say they go through, you see here, view position descriptions. They go through all the position descriptions and they said, this is a brand new job. This is not something that I see in our organization yet. So I would like to, I can't open a requisition because it doesn't exist, so I would like to request a new job or request a new position. And again, we'll talk about this in a bit, but you don't necessarily have to push that out to them. But they're able to do that, and they're able to push out for hiring resources at this point. So you see they have a limited view, not everything that the recruiter has, but they have just enough that they need to manage their own positions that roll up under them. Okay, and this is, you'll see this, and this is from Infor. So this is a view of the web manager space that you see here, and you've got some widgets on here, and you'll see the job requisition count. So this manager has a lot of positions open. Maybe they're up, maybe the hiring manager is actually, regional director or regional manager over a bunch of territories that they hire, and maybe the store managers can't do the hiring, maybe this person does, or maybe these just roll up through them. Because we've got 101 open requisitions here. It's a little insane. And there's a couple on hold. So you can put requisitions on hold. Say there's a budgetary issue. Say, it happens a lot in our type of work is there's a lot of work one day, and then the next day everything slows down, and all of a sudden you don't need an extra FTE. But you don't necessarily want to close that requisition down because you see in the next month or so, everything's going to be picking up again. So you can put requisitions on hold and you'll see what they've got there. So this is just a nice overview from the dashboard side as opposed to what we saw a little while ago to actually open requisitions.
Right. You'll also see a lot of that with the on hold for upcoming initiatives. I know that I will be hiring for this new clinic I'm going to be opening, for example, or this new store. So you might have all those requisitions ready
to roll.
Just put them on hold so that as soon as we hit that date, we're going to flip them over to open. So Bill, we have a question?
We do. In regards to what we're presently seeing, do you have to be on a certain version to utilize all the functionalities being discussed today?
It is, a lot of things are going to be on some of the higher versions, usually at least 11.0 for some of the pieces. What we're looking at right here, this is 11.01. The previous screen was 10.02, I believe. So I'll try to call those out a little bit more specifically about if this is only in a certain version. But the raw out of the box, a lot of this stuff is going to work.
On the S3 side, it's immaterial, right?
Yeah, S3, there is no such.
So if you do have questions about that, we're more than happy to schedule a call. We can talk about the specifics for each version. Thank you very much.
Yeah, in the S3 system, all you have really is the PA31 for candidates, and you have a job requisition opening, but there is no sourcing or recruiting tool for you. Usually you just kind of interface that in from your third party
Right.
tool.
now we're drilling into a little bit more about what the manager can actually do. Now, the important thing to see on this slide, and we're looking at the rich client version here, and this is a 1002, but it's the same in the previous or the subsequent versions as well. They only see the requisitions where they are assigned as the hiring manager. So they're not going to be seeing everything in the world. They're not going to see other people's recs or anything like that. It's going to be locked down. You can see that this right here, the selection processes tab that they have is actually much fewer. They don't have new, they don't have, they're missing a lot of those things. And this is something that's done very intentionally. They're only going to see people where the recruiter has gone through and made an initial pass and said, okay, they've passed a little bit of the screening information and we think that they're good, so I'm going to turn them over to the hiring manager review phase. So the hiring manager at that point can go in and drill into this candidate's profile, look and see how qualified they are. Do I like them? Do I think I want to move them over? And say that they're qualified. And they would move them to that tab. At that point, that could trigger a couple different things. We could, at that point, start to schedule them for interviews, figure out whether or not we're going to bring them in and talk to them. We can also start to use that as an initial pass and say, you know what? I've got 5 people right now. They're all sitting in hiring manager review, but I like these 3, but I don't want to get rid of those other ones yet.
Just in case something happens that maybe they have salary requirements that we can't meet or whatever it may be.
Yep. So you can keep them kind of in that holding status, which would be that hiring manager review. They also have the ability to look at dispositioned candidates. And this is something where, again, that's out of the box. I can tell you right now, nobody ever, I don't think I've seen in any, allows their managers to just see the dispositions tab by itself. That's one of the very, very common configurations that we'll talk about in just a moment. But you can see these hiring managers are actually able to do some of these actions themselves. You no longer have to wait for passing the football back and forth. I don't have to send this memo back to the recruiter saying, okay, bring in these 4 people. They'll be able to actually do some of these functions themselves.
And that is something we didn't show here is, when you right click on these, there's a whole menu of things you can do, and you can schedule an interview, and that will send them an appointment request, and it'll put it on the manager's calendar as well. So there's a lot of nice uses of Microsoft products, Outlook products, to be able to manage what's going on outside of the recruiter space.
Right. It's not a full integration, but there's a lot of add-ins and tie-ins like that. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And like we were saying with the interviews, if we've got it scheduled, it's going to show up in that today view. So again, you can start to see how it kind of ties together in the back end.
Okay, so on the employee space, employees are able, if you decide to open up an internal job board, employees are able to view any of the new postings. They are able to apply for any of these postings. They can set up job alerts. So maybe there is a job that there are no open positions currently, but that is an area they're trying to move for their career path, or maybe they're just trying to move into another area because they're just interested in pursuing a different career. And they can set up job alerts to notify them when a position does get posted internally or externally, I'm sure, because if it's internal, it'll be for both. If they see something that they think a friend would be really good for, they can send that posting to, or a notification to their friend. Transition management, Matt's going to get into in a little bit. For the employees, this is really talking about, I'm in one position right now and I've applied for another position that I was offered. There are tasks that I need to do to close out my current position. My manager may ask me to document, put an SOP, standard operating procedure together of all the things I do for the next person that comes in. Maybe that next person has already started, and one of my transition tasks is to sit with them and train them on X, Y, and Z. So there is transition management. Like I said, we're going to talk about the onboarding and offboarding, and crossboarding is this really functionality, but that's what they'll see in their employee space. They're not going to be employees quite yet when they do onboarding. So this transition management is a really nice tool. And then for the incoming manager to assign tasks for them to get ready to move into their new position if they may need to take any training to prepare them. And then they're able to modify, so this has been a little a little contentious about modifying their internal candidate profile. They're able to update some of their information. They can put in new credentials. They can put in if they maybe had a degree that they didn't put in initially because their position didn't require it before, and other skills that maybe their current position didn't require, but the new one that they would like to be considered for it requires. They are able to add that onto their profile.
This comes with a big caution. Somewhere within the past couple versions, between 10 to something and 11, I don't know exactly where, unfortunately. It used to be that an employee could modify something on their talent acquisition side and it wouldn't hit the employee profile. That has changed now. So that what now happens is I might go in and add in that degree. As soon as I do that, it's going to go through the qualifications process flow, and it will actually end up on my employee profile as well. So that's just a little bit of a change from one of the versions. So I just wanted to bring that up. If you're using some of the older versions, it might still allow the internal employee to modify just that job application, but now it's going to go to the employee profile as well. So,
and if the qualification flow is pulled, potentially their manager will have to approve that those qualifications are valid.
Right.
So if
Right.
somebody's trying to do something on the sly and maybe apply for something without their manager knowing, manager's gonna know.
Right,
And
right.
they have to go in and approve those things. And then managers also approving something that's, not really, that has nothing to do with their current job. So it
Right.
might incur some more work for managers that they might need to be aware of.
Right, exactly. Candidate space. Now, when I'm talking about that, I'm really talking about that front door, the external portion of the system that you're going to roll out to people. You've got two distinct profiles at that point that a candidate can fill out. I, as a candidate, can go in and pre-populate all of my information before I even apply for a job. I can start to put in all of my credentials, my license and certification, and depending upon how much we ask, I could start to fill in some of my profile questions. Am I eligible to work in the United States? Yes. So if I'm ever asked that question, it's already pre-populated. But then I can also be very specific and say, all right, for this particular application, I want to have something else show up. So if I currently have my MBA and I don't want anybody to know about it because, you know what, it's on my candidate profile, it's true, I've got that, but I'm applying for a housekeeping position because I'm trying to downsize. I just want to kind of get to a little bit of a less pressure environment or something. On my individual job application for the housekeeper position, I can actually go in and remove my MBA so nobody has to see that and think I'm overqualified. So that's kind of an extreme thing, but nonetheless. I'm also able to do a job cart. So I can put something kind of in a, hold on to this. I'm going to apply for it later. Just like your Amazon shopping cart.
Yeah, your
it's going to
wish
sit there.
lists and-
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. So I'll come back and apply for it later on. I'm able to see the statuses of other applications. So I applied for 15 other positions, and I can see what my status is on those 15. This is one of the biggest helpers because at that point you no longer have these candidates calling up your recruiters saying, hey, so what's happening with this position? Instead, I can log in and see, oh, okay, well, I'm still in the whatever
Screen,
status.
right.
Yep. So I can see that. I'm also able to say, you know what, I just took this position with somebody else, so I can withdraw from some of my other applications. Same kind of functionality also exists for the external candidate. I can create those job alerts. So let me know whenever a position opens up in my hometown. I can see that right away, and whenever you schedule that flow to run, that person's going to get an email saying, hey, something matched your position or your job alert. I can also sit there and look at it and say, great, I'm going to forward this over to Melissa. I think she'd be a great fit for it, and kick off an email to her so she can go in and apply for herself. And then most importantly is when you're actually onboarding this person, they are able to accept their offer or view their offer letter right through the system. You don't have to send it to them hard copy or email them in some sort of unsecure way. We'll burst them out a link where they'll actually log back into candidate space and sign off on that offer letter. So when we look at candidate space, there's a couple different flavors of it. So if you look at older versions or even the current version, you've seen the classic candidate space, which is kind of, Infor-y, and I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It
not
looks the
great.
same for everybody, kind of.
Right. So, it is what it is. You can make some modifications, but the display is kind of older, and, nothing wrong with that.
Vintage.
Yes, it's classic.
It's classic
Yes.
and vintage.
But then they also have the new version of Candidate Space, which is a cleaner display. It actually uses more HTML5. And so we're able to modify some things a little bit better, apply some style sheets, things like that. And that is the new Candidate Space. That being said, something that is frustrating is people might have this right now and they might roll out the new Candidate Space, but they might not make any other modifications for it. I've seen gone into people who are live on talent acquisition and they still have the Infor logo up at the corner. So it can be a little bit frustrating, but nonetheless, you can make these changes, and we'll show you a couple of those in a moment.
Can I ask what version? The new candidate space?
New Candidate Space actually kicked in version 10. So it's defined on the job board, and you click on the button that says Custom Candidate UI, and then that will invoke the new version of the Candidate Space. And then I'll show you in a moment where you actually can change it and apply your version of Candidate Space in a moment.
Nice.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about a couple things that are brand new in 1101. So this is 1101 specific. So don't get upset when I say that you can't always have this. If you're on version 1101, there's the new transition management. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it is, previous to this version, you used HR Service Delivery, the old and Wisen tool that had onboarding, offboarding, knowledge base, and case management. So the case management and knowledge base still live in HR Service Delivery. That is still a tool that is going to be around. If those are the tools you need, you still want to keep your SaaS with that. The onboarding and offboarding pieces will move into the talent acquisition piece. And this is, this is the place that people always had problems because they had a recruiting system and they had an employee space over here, but they didn't have that little middle place where people could go log in and put in their birth date and put in their social security number and all those things you're not supposed to ask when they're still candidates in your recruiting system.
And the thing that is very important to note is transition management is not transition tasks. It actually is a new, more fully built out version of transition tasks. And I think it has a lot more power, honestly, because we can do that for internal, external people, cross-boarding, off-boarding, all of that. Also new in 1101, mobile apply actually exists now. If you currently are on an older version and you started to roll it out and you saw the mobile express interest, there actually is the ability now to apply for the job rather than just say
I'm what.
Exactly, and have to go back on a PC later on and do it. Also with this is there's more integration with Tracker I9 and Symmetry, we believe the product is called, for tax forms and tax automation. So we can start to have people fill out their W-4s and local state taxes, start to fill that out through this.
Through this, right. And we'll show you at least what the I-9 is going to look like.
So in transition management, you've got a lot of different functionalities that you can do. You can build out different plans for onboarding, cross-boarding, off-boarding, et cetera. You're able to define all of these things. You can define what kind of tasks they are. You can say that this is an administrative function, or we want to route something to IT to create their network ID. We can define all of these tasks. Whatever you want to have built in there, you can do. You can also assign things to managers to say, okay, show this person how the department works. Take them around the department and introduce them to people. And we can also assign tasks specifically to the resource themselves or the internal or the candidate. Tell them, hey, fill these forms out so that you're ready to go day one. We can define the due dates, we can set prerequisites, and we can also define all of the email templates associated with it.
Okay, here's a little copy again. You see the Infor icon. This is taken from Infor. They have, because we do not have the Tracker I9 on our sandbox, but you'll see here it's a little blurry, but this is a transition task where they're asking for personal information. So you can see here is some of the stuff that they weren't able to put on their candidate record. And then if we flip to the next screen, here's their I-9. So the I-9, if you're using the tracker I-9, does have the functionality to validate social security numbers. So it's not going to validate if it's their social security number, but if they key in something that is not a valid social security number, they will get an error that lets them know this is not valid, go back in there, it won't save it, and there's some other checks and balances behind the tracker I-9.
Right.
Okay, so here are some of the functions or features that will be coming out in, I guess, the next 3 to 6 months. I think the candidate relationship management one will be a little bit longer term, but I guess, do you want to talk about a couple of those?
Yeah, so with the relationship management, it's going to be much more of a system where we can interact with our candidates before they're even applied to a position or they've applied to other things, but you know that they might be a good candidate and you want to keep that line of communication open with them. So this is what this module will start to do. So we're going to be able to keep these people warm and, really keep in touch with them, let them know what's going on with them and with your organization. They're also building some things out for video interface or video interviews. So you might be able to just schedule a Skype interview with them. Also some referral bonuses, things like that. This is down the road, they're working on that. Building in more integration with social networks, your LinkedIns, your Facebooks, your Google Pluses, starting to build that out. Also, they are building out a staffing agency portal. So if you're always working with the staffing agency, we might be able to give them a view into the system and have them perform some functions.
And then the last one there is your talent sciences to talent acquisition updates. So right now they're kind of, talent science is sitting underneath the global HR core, but it does have updates that you have to take. Again, it is a SaaS, it's a software as a service, so they push those updates out. They are working to automate all of those updates in the back end.
So why would we actually want to use this? One of the big advantages and something that will really help you out is your recruitment workflows are built out. So you don't have to build these things anymore to say who gets to sign off on it. If I want to request a position, I'm kicking off a flow as a manager and I don't have to send paper around anymore.
You're going to have all of your statutory compliance, so you don't have to worry about asking the wrong questions or gathering the wrong data. You're able to do all of your reporting. It'll pull from your recruiting system and your onboarding system to do your compliance reporting.
Right, and you're not going to be able to backdate somebody's application from 3 weeks ago. No, we have to put them in when they're actually in.
They're actually in, yeah.
This is huge.
Yes.
No interfaces to a third-party ATS anymore. It's integrated. Everything is going to be built right in, and the nice thing is, because of that, we're able to quickly see, we can see other people we might want to use.
So going back to the candidate pools, you're not only looking at every candidate or applicant that's set up a profile in your system that you've got a new job and you can look at, but you can also look at your internal candidate pool. So it's that proactive recruiting of saying, I've got hundreds of people here, let me ping some people to see if they're interested in this before I really hard go out for recruiting on this position.
Right. It's seamless integration between the candidate and employee. So if I, as a candidate, went in and built out my profile and have 15 education records and 12 credentials and all that, as soon as I'm hired in the system, the recruiter does not have to sit there and re-enter all of those things. It will go from my candidate profile onto my profile as an employee. So I kind of cut that middleman out. And really, when you get down to it, it's just talking about the speed of hire. You want to get people in the door. You want to get them in quickly. You want to get them to be functional as soon as possible. So it really speeds it up.
We do have 5 minutes, so I know we love to talk. We love this product too. So so we're going to try and get through the next couple of slides relatively quickly. So Matt's going to go over some configurations, and if you have any follow-up questions, you can always let us know. But we do want to leave at least a minute or two, a couple minutes for your questions, and we'll stick around. So if you have time after 2 o'clock, we'll be here. we'll still be talking.
If you can't tell, we love talking about this stuff. So,
Yeah.
so things that you can make, or changes that you commonly can make in candidate space. Okay, you can do things like change the favicon up in the corner. You can change the name of the tabs. You can change the logo. Please change the logo. No offense to Infor, it's a beautiful logo and everything, but you know what?
It's not your organization.
Yeah, you don't want people to get confused. And I've seen people do that where they're actually confused that why am I seeing an Infor page? I'm actually applying to this hospital. What's going on? We can change the links up here at the top. We can change the order of the tabs. I've had a lot of people who don't like this hot jobs thing. They don't like those priority requisitions. All jobs are important, you know, so they might want to remove that. You can change the fields that you search on. You can change the names of labels. You can change the user field, or if you have user fields, you want to collect that data, add them onto it. You can change the button names. A lot of people don't like job alert, so they'll change it to notification. You can change the overall color palette. You can absolutely do these things. And most importantly, we can change the style. We can really, go through and make it look like it
branded
fits.
for you. It doesn't
Exactly.
look like every other person that's using talent acquisition through Infor. It looks and feels more like your organization's internet pages.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, what it ends up looking like is you can see we built this out. There's a careers at RPI. That's the name of the tab. The favicon has changed. The logo has changed. I'm collecting a lot of this information, but it's actually wrapped around and it actually looks like the RPI website. A thing I brought up about job boards is, you know what if I wanted to have a very special job board that was just for very special positions, or like if you're in a hospital, you want to have a nursing specific job board. You can absolutely do that and have two different external job boards. You just change the URL and you're seeing totally different jobs and totally different styles. And I've seen that done a lot where people will have that nursing page and all the links are all about nursing at this place or the other place. So we can make all those changes pretty quickly and easily just by modifying a zip file. Employee space configurations. Same kind of thing. We can change how much of the profile they can change. We can also suppress certain pieces. Do we want to ask them about location? We've got a single location. Who cares? Willing to relocate? I hope not, because you're our employee and we only have one location. So we can take that away. We can also change whether or not employees can even apply for positions.
So maybe they can just view.
Yeah. And I see this a lot, and I've seen people do it a lot where if you're within your first 6 months of employment, I don't even want you applying for other jobs. You just got in the door. You can't hate it that much. Stay with us for a while, So that's something else that can change. I've also seen people suppress it so that they couldn't apply if there's currently a disciplinary record against them. So we might kind of lock down that module for them. It's a configuration that you can definitely make. I've also seen, this one is very, very big. Do you want hourly employees to actually be spending their time internally applying for other jobs? So that's another thing that people have configured on and off.
Okay, and then manager space, we kind of talked about, do you want your managers to even request a new job or new position if it's not there? Generally, that happens a little bit higher up than a hiring manager, unless the hiring manager is at the top of the chain. So you can determine to just take that out. And do you want them to even be able to disposition? They could make the hire and let the recruiter continue to disposition the rest of the people.
If you let your managers disposition, you're going to have some interesting things that will happen. So just be very, very careful with that if you allow them to do that.
Okay, and go really quickly, if you want them, to change the order of the selection process. Do they need to see all those candidates like they saw on that first screen? They just may want to see, qualified ones and take everything out of review. Or maybe you allow another manager to do everybody from review, and the second manager just sees the qualified. Maybe the higher up manager sees them.
Recruiter space, lots of changes happen in there a lot, or I've seen a lot of changes made in there. You can exchange or expand how many requisitions they can see. So if you want them to be able to see everything, or if there's a lot of cross coverage that has to happen within your recruitment staff, exactly. Maybe we expand that and let more recruiters see more requisitions. Mass emailing of candidates. I want to be able to click on like 5 different candidates and send them the same email just from the candidate pool. They're not attached on a single requisition, so this is a custom flow that we can build out. Change the fields on the talent profile. You don't want them to see everything, or you want them to see more. Absolutely, you can do that. Add or delete links in documents, or links to other applications. Absolutely, you can do that. Changing which disposition codes certain recruiters can use. I've seen some functionality added in for that. Absolutely valid if you don't want them to accidentally use the wrong thing.
Yep.
You can restrict that down. We can change proxies. We can change who the default requisition is. I've seen some people out there who actually put the recruiter right on the position. So as soon as I start to recruit for that position, I know exactly what recruiter it's going to go to. I can change that automatically. I can change how much recruiters can actually do on the hire, or how much they can see on the hire action. Parse it down. You don't need to have them do everything. We can change our actions. We can mass disposition all of our candidates. A lot of actions that we can just kind of throw out there for people. Other things that we can do. Posting automation. If we want to create the internal and external job postings simultaneously, we can build out a process flow that will do that, so you don't actually have to go into the job requisition and change which posting template you use. I want to burst them out at the same time to internal and external.
Yeah.
Just we can change that through a process flow.
Efficiency.
Dispositions. Do I want all disposition codes to get an email? We can change that up and actually change the functionality so that certain disposition codes, if I accidentally put it in as a recruiter, if I attached you to the wrong requisition, I don't want to send that candidate a disposition, so I might change that up. We can also change it so that we don't use the automatic emails, because as soon as I change that, as soon as I disposition that person, they get an email. But what if I want to batch that? If I want to hold on to it for a while? We can absolutely change that through a process flow and just send out dispositions once a day. Let them feel like they're, being heavily vetted or something like that. Notification of changes to jobs or positions. I have to thank my people from Norton out there who brought this one up. So I changed something on the job, and I want my recruiters to know at that point that the job has changed, the credentials for that job have changed. Let the recruiter know so that they can start to revet their candidates or possibly change the posting. Offer phase, or the offer process. Adding in actions without having multiple templates. We're working with a client right now who, instead of using 20 different offer letter templates, they're going to use one, and they're just going to use a checkbox to toggle on certain portions of the offer letter, so they don't have to choose the right offer letter posting template. We can also change it so that the hiring manager doesn't actually get to sign off on an offer. That's actually a very common customization I've seen. Job description sign off. Make it so that when we're onboarding somebody, they actually have to look at their job description and sign off to say, yep, this is what I'm going to be evaluated on. Huge in healthcare, definitely. If I hire somebody, do I want to notify other recruiters that I just hired this candidate? So that's kind of a very important one. Again, my folks over at Norton did that, which makes a ton of sense, especially for large or decentralized recruiting teams. I need you to know that you're not going to be able to hire this person because they just accepted mine. Hands off, don't touch them. So, and these are just a few of the configurations we've seen. There's probably 20 other ones which I can't put on because we're already over time.
We might have
anyway.
a follow-up presentation that's only common configurations for talent acquisition or recruiter space. So
Told you I can talk about this for years. So, okay. Any other questions that have come in?
We have one really good one here, which I don't know the answer to, is why it's a good one. But, can multi-tenant cloud customers modify those landing pages, like the candidate space?
Now, the candidate space landing page is very interesting because it's defined on the job board itself. So when I create a job board, I'm able to attach that specific zip file, which has the folder structure that's preset and all the things that I can modify. I attach that to the job board itself. It's held as a database record, and then when somebody invokes candidate space, it will invoke that zip file.
So the answer is yes.
It should be able to be done.
Which would make a lot of sense. have you ever created a way for TA to accept APIs from external vendors? I've used IPA to send APIs to vendors, but to accept an API and then trigger a flow to update TA is a new challenge. Example, getting
So it's like
posts from a background
checks.
check vendor, and then using a flow to update TA on those background checks. I actually feel like there was a presentation on this at the IPA symposium where a school out in North Carolina was using IPA to send out the need for the teacher background check and also the notification, and then grabbing that information. I'll let you answer in a second, but I believe if you go to Digital Concourse, there's an IPA community, and that presentation will be on there, and it was given by Greensboro?
Yeah.
Greenville County Schools. But sorry, I'll let the experts answer as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you can do that for APIs. You can also do it, and I've seen people where they did want to use talent acquisition, but they weren't going to use like all the functionality. They had a third-party vendor who still did the front end. We can also accept a flat file from that and import that data into talent acquisition. So hiring managers and all the stuff that we're talking about can use that process over there, but somebody would apply through a third party and get that information back into the system. So should be able to do both.
One final question actually coming from me, going through this presentation, if I'm out there, I'm on version 10, I'm looking at some of this functionality that's in version 11, and I'm probably thinking, wow, I wish I had that. I know I've heard from Stout that the upgrade from Landmark 10 to Landmark 11, which presumably is a prerequisite, is in place. So it's not that bad. But, the migration from 10 to 11 depends on how much configurations you have. What do you guys think that looks like in terms of recommendations or effort, or what would you do if you're running 10 out there?
It would really depend upon, like, the speed of how quickly I would make that jump would depend upon which pieces of functionality I really needed to get. I know for talent acquisition purposes, a lot of people really want that ability to do the mobile apply. And that's only in these later versions. So if that's really, really important to me.
Transition management, everybody's been waiting for that. And
Exactly.
multi-tenant has it right now. I think single tenant may have it. On-prem, it's out there for them to put it on. On-prem only gets 2 updates a year. So, some of this functionality's coming out, but it is in those later versions. And I mean, if you're going from 10.0 to 11.02, I mean, it's almost like a re-implementation. Let's talk about what do you want that all those dashboards, everything to look like, because they're going to be almost completely different functionality than you had in the 10.0 version.
Right.
So mini discovery process there.
Yeah, and in terms of like the configurations, we've seen people with 5 configurations, and we've seen people with 700.
50.
Yeah. And the good news is that as the product has matured, there's been a lot. There are many more resources available now, so that when you're going through an upgrade, even with a critical update or you're applying that, you can very quickly and easily run a system command to see if there are any invalid configurations. And that's just talking at the LPL level. So if you know that you want to check that out, you'll be able to run that query. You can also see very quickly, if something has been flipped to invalid or something like that. You're still going to want to go through and look at all your configurations, make sure that they're showing up. The other thing that I would recommend on it is you want to make sure that you're not hiding some of the new functionality. So you do want to make sure that when you're doing that upgrade, look at the out of the box and just make sure you're not hiding this incredible new module because you have a configuration that is hiding it right now.
And security.
Yes.
Security needs to
Absolutely.
be, because there's so many more classes that have been pushed out. And if you roll out your current security, you might be opening stuff up, or you may be hiding a lot of new functionality on that as well.
Right.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you, Matt. I want to thank you, Melissa, for a very excellent presentation.